Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, March 19, 2026. Time in Texas, about 11 a.m. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share, too. Some of the things we'll cover. 5th U.S. military base, JB, and the U.S. intel new. And what about Joe Kent? And who is currently bombing from Iran? Is it Iran or is it China? So let's get started. And the U.S. military continues to hunt and kill. So we have this. We now have 2 CMEs inbound. One to reach the U.S. today, and the second one about March 21. NOAA puts forth that March 19 through the end of the week, March 23, the Earth will be going through strong geomagnetic storms, G2, G3 level, juiced up by the equinox. So that's going on. And we have this, breaking news. We have the 5th U.S. Military base to be put on a Charlie level, the 3rd U.S. base to be put on Charlie level lockdown. We have had McGuire in New Jersey, that was Charlie level. We had MacDill in Florida, Charlie level. And the 3rd to go on Charlie level lockdown is Fort McNair, located near Washington, D.C., on which many of President Trump's cabinet are currently living, including Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And what caused the Charlie level lockdown last night were unidentified drones penetrating the airspace over Fort McNair and really honing in on the homes that Hegseth and Rubio are currently living in. So that's going on. It's believed by the U.S. military to be drones put forth by activated Iranian sleeper cells. So that's going on. And we have this. From Fox News Live this morning, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and General of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, gave an update on what the U.S. military is currently doing. In Iran, they are massively taking down missiles and launchers and underground locations and industrial bases. They've taken down hundreds of the industrial manufacturing bases. They've taken down 120 Navy ships, 44 mine-laying speedboats, and 11 Iranian subs have also been sunk. Pete Hegseth had a good point. Iran's core industry, because we now know that Iran, with its direct and indirect proxies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, and also militia groups in Iraq. This is what Iran spent all of its income on and nothing for its people. So Iran's core industry has been terrorism. And I submit this. The U.S. and Israel have to finish this job, and toward that end, we have united and in agreement. We have a majority of the American people. We know that the largest united political group in the U.S. is MAGA, Make America Great Again, and 89% of this group approve of President Trump and Israel hitting Iran. And we also have the Gulf states neighbor, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar. The Arab world also wants the U.S. and Israel to finish this job. That means taking out the Islamic Republic form of government, the IRGC, the Basij group that machine guns down Iranian citizens in its street, but also the religious theocracy, which has, it appears at its core, a psychopath belief that they must bring about World War III in order to bring in their Messiah figure, I can't think of his name right now, but I'll think of it. But at any rate, we do have agreement by a majority of the American people. We have agreement, certainly Israel is in, but we now have the Arab Gulf states also in. Iran, the Islamic Republic, must go away as a form of government. And their military ability to launch drones and missiles must also go away. We have from U.S. CENTCOM that the U.S. military is now striking deeper and deeper into Iran, and that yesterday along the southern coast, the U.S. military dropped 5,000-pound bombs. That's to aid in the U.S. regaining control of the Strait of Hormuz so that oil can flow to the rest of the world. The U.S. military continues to hunt and kill ammo depots, and they've taken out 120 Navy ships plus 44 mine layers. And yesterday, due to the control of the Iranian airspace, the U.S. military then could add in the use of Apaches and A-10 Warthogs. And they've also taken down hundreds of speedboats in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. We also have yesterday been taking down the Iranian proxies, militias in Iraq. The U.S. military in the past 48 hours has made 90 hits on the Karg Island. So that's going on. And we have this. Now, this is my perspective. We know in Iran, right about, here's the Strait of Hormuz, the southern coast of Iran, is located Bashir nuclear power plant and a town. And this nuclear power plant was paid for, built, and operated by Russia. They had 600 technicians in that area. And then when the U.S. came in to hit Iran, Russia shut in the nuclear power plant and evac'd its 600 technicians from Bashir. Can it be that the reason Russia did this is because President Trump intimated to President Putin that the U.S. hitting Iran would increase oil prices and that the U.S. would take the sanctions off of Russia, which dramatically helps the Russian economy. But I submit this. This Bashir nuclear power plant, paid for, built, and operated by Russia along the southern coast of Iran, wouldn't that be a great place to enrich uranium? Just saying. And now we have this. So the JB Commie Dem regime and U.S. intel knew by the spring of 2020 that there had been in the U.S. in the presidential election of 2020 a coup, an overthrow of the U.S. government, and that JB had not been elected, but rather President Trump had been. So now this information is coming out. It's being put forth by Just the News and Joshua Phillip of Crossroads that the U.S. and the UK are releasing this information that in 2020 China had hacked the voter rolls in both the U.S. and UK, and that China and the U.S. had also hacked driver's license data in the U.S. Now, during the 2020 U.S. presidential coup, several instances came about where packages containing thousands of U.S. driver's licenses were intercepted. I know one shipment was going from, I believe, New York to Pennsylvania, and we know Pennsylvania is a swing state, and I don't recall the other location, but it was determined by the U.S. intel that these fake driver's licenses were going to be used by various people to put in fake votes. But now we have this information coming out publicly that the U.S. presidential election in 2020 had been rigged. A coup had taken place, aided and abetted by China. And we have this. And I have been putting this information out since 2020. There were multiple nations involved in this coup in the U.S. in 2020. China, Venezuela, Cuba, Canada, Germany, Iran, Italy, Serbia, plus others. And I assure, and so far we are in a way hitting China now because we've hit Venezuela and Iran, depriving China of oil. Cuba's on the hit list, so is Canada, Germany, Italy, and Serbia. And I assure you, President Trump has a hit list, which he is checking twice, as do the American people, including the majority of the largest political united group in the U.S., MAGA. So that's going on. And we need to do a shout out for Argentina. It's come out in the past 24 hours. Argentina has also stopped being a part of WHO, and Argentina is now sending frigates, ships, to help the U.S. in controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Way to go, Argentina. And we have this from TOUSI TV. So last night, Iran, in the past 24 hours, Israel has hit a natural gas plant inside Iran that was used to power about 80% of Iran's electric power grid. And in retaliation, Iran hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, I believe the UAE, and hitting their energy locations. Now Qatar is expelling the IRGC diplomats, and so that's going on. And last night there was an emergency meeting of the Arab nations in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the largest Arab nation, but all of these nations now are infuriated at Iran and want to strike Iran also. So that's going on. Iran is now at war with its Gulf state neighbors also. That's right. But that fits in with their religious belief that they had to start World War III to bring in their Messiah figure, Mahdi. Just remembered the name. And we have this from TOUSI TV. Qatar's LNG complex was hit last night by Iran. And I believe Iran also made multiple hits in Israel on the Ben Gurion airport. So that's going on. And last night, Iran hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Israel. And we have this, that Iran, also in the past 24 hours, has blown up the only bridge between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Iran continues its strikes on its Gulf states' neighbors. And we're seeing the price of oil increase from the Middle East. In some areas, it's $145. From Oman, it's $173 a barrel. West Texas measure, $98. The Brent is up to $114. Japan is now suffering massively with cutbacks in its supply of gasoline. And we have this from Michael JACO. U.S. bases are now U.S. targets. We had those incidents I was referring to, plus Michael JACO brought out a fourth base located in Texas. He didn't identify the base, but explosives were found in a laundry basket on the base. So that's going on. And we know Holloman, McGuire, now McNair, U.S. bases are now targets for the Iranian sleeper cells. And we have this. It's also more information, is coming out about the China CCP-owned land near U.S. military bases. That's being researched, and ownership is being removed by the U.S. government. And we have this. Now, I believe in Iran, we do have Iran launching drones and bombs, but I also believe in Iran, we also have China actively operating in launching missiles and drones against the U.S. and against Israel. And this is coming out from China Observer. In Iran, China has 400 military technicians to operate the Chinese radar and weapon systems launchers that China sold to Iran, primarily from the Chinese weapons company CETC. But it does appear that information is coming out that China does indeed have military technicians in Iran operating their radar and also launchers because the IRGC does not have the expertise. So it appears, and also China has been operating in Iran, their technicians, smart sea mines. So that's going on. So we see the U.S. and Israel fighting against both Iran and China on a kinetic basis. And we have this. During a recent CCP meeting in China, we have Xi suggesting that China turn the U.S. and Israel conflict against Iran. Yeah, okay, Xi was in a CCP meeting. A video is coming out showing the words coming out of Xi's mouth. China and Iran should turn the U.S. and Israel conflict against Iran into Afghanistan. So we see now information coming out. China has Chinese military in Iran launching missiles and drones and smart sea mines against the U.S. and Israel. And in China, we have the president of China, Xi, calling the shots for the Chinese military in Iran. So we see that China is also much more than a participant. They are actively killing U.S. military. No wonder President Trump canceled his trip to China. And we have this about Joe Kent. Okay. So when I first heard that name, Joe Kent, it really didn't ring a bell with me. But Joe Kent works for President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, as her Director of Counterterrorism. Now, Joe Kent is a military veteran with many military honors. He served overseas 11 deployments. He's also a U.S. military Gold Star husband because his wife was also killed. She was in the military, and she was killed in a combat situation in Syria a few years ago. Now, we saw Joe Kent come out and say he was resigning from his position because he didn't agree with President Trump. And he stated that Iran did not pose a threat to the U.S. Now it's coming out that since the Iran conflict began, Joe Kent had been locked out of the presidential briefings since it began February 28. And now it's coming out that he was locked out of the intel briefings about Iran because prior to that time, so that began February 28, we don't know, early in February, January or so, the FBI had been investigating Joe Kent for releasing classified information. So that's going on. That's okay. And what would have caused Joe Kent to turn from being a U.S. military hero to being a traitor is unknown to me. So we do know he had a varied political affiliation. When the Democrats were in power, he was a Democrat. When the Republicans came to power, he joined the Republican Party. So who can say what goes on inside someone's mind? And we found out before he resigned, he had lined up an interview with Tucker Carlson. So that's going on. And we had information coming out about the FBI investigation. We had several sources, including Breitbart, and we had also Carolyn Levitt. I don't believe she mentioned the FBI, but she did detail some information about his resignation. And so that's going on. And now we have this. Yeah, so some of my sources for this information on Joe Kent, I had Officer Tatum, Benny Johnson, Carolyn Levitt, Breitbart. Yep, and Breitbart had a White House correspondent who had 3 sources about Joe Kent being investigated by the FBI. So, yeah. And now we have this. Yeah, 89% of MAGA support President Trump's moves against Iran, but we see now, and I've been putting forth that President Trump had a brilliant plan to take down our number one enemy, China, by first depriving China of oil, by taking Venezuela and now Iran. But we have this new information coming out that Chinese military are actually in Iran, operating missiles and launchers and drones and smart sea mines against the U.S. and Israel, and that in China, the president of China, Xi, is calling the shots for the Chinese military in Iran. And we also see that more information is coming out about the 2020 U.S. presidential coup. And now we see God, the American people, and President Trump going against these nations that brought about a coup in the U.S. in 2020. Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, China, Canada, Germany, Serbia, and more, Italy, and more. So that's going on. As I said, the American people, and President Trump have a list, and we're checking it twice. It is good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.